People ask me all the time, hey, why are you not Protestant? Why do you not sing like you used to, modern day worship music? And why do you not go to these events, these big events that are basically like concerts? Well, I'll say one thing, and I don't mean to offend anyone, and I don't want to harm anyone by saying this. The Protestant church, even the Lutherans, which are the oldest of them, I would say, one of the oldest, do not resemble the early church as it was. If you read Ignatius of Antioch, Antiochia, and you read him, I said Antioch in Spanish, I don't know why, but he was the apostolic successor of John the Apostle. John the Apostle taught him everything he knows, and John the Apostle is in the Bible, of course. If you read him, he believed in the Eucharist, that when you take communion and you have certain prayers, it turns the bread and wine to the flesh and blood of Christ. It doesn't say ocean spray and crackers, and that it's symbolic and we should just play pretend. And historically, the Bible was not here until the 4th century. So for 400 years, you had to rely on church tradition. So what was here before the Bible? Because that doesn't make Christianity false. You know, the Bible was, canonized in certain ecumenical councils, like the Council of Carthage, the Council of Rome, the Council of Nicaea. But what you will find is that they had to rely on apostolic traditions such as the Eucharist, such as infant baptism, such as holy water. They had all these traditions since the beginning. So, with that being said, we can also go to the Council of Ephesus in 431, where it says that if you do not, and this ecumenical council, you got to remember, the Trinity is not, the word Trinity is nowhere in the Bible. So who established that word for what is in the Bible? You needed an ecumenical council, right? Without these councils, you do not have the Trinity. You do not have the fact that Jesus is 100% God and 100% man. If you go to the Council of Ephesus in 431, what do they say? They say that if you do not affirm that Mary is the mother of God, you must be made anathema, meaning that you are gravely incorrect, right? Basically, that you are denouncing the doctrine of Christianity. So when you look at church history, the church was not modern day instruments with songs written by anybody and anybody can make any church. No. In reality, Jesus gave certain people certain authority, as in Matthew 16:18 and Matthew 18:18, he gave them certain authority to bind teachings on the church and on the people who attend that church, right? That's why you had 72 apostles and you had apostolic successors, such as Ignatius of Antioch, who was taught by John the Apostle. Although it's not mentioned in the Bible, it doesn't mean much historically. And people will say, well, if it's not in the Bible, then it's false. In John 21:25, and I'm going to use the NIV, okay? I'll play a fairground to the Protestants. It says, Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written down. Meaning that a lot of things in Christianity, it's not that they're not biblical, they align with the Bible, but you needed to depend on the church to give you these traditions and to give you these, the church, basically, to give you Jesus Christ, to give you the names of the apostles and the disciples in the Bible. You needed to depend on the church. You needed to depend on Athanasius and Irenaeus in the third to fourth century to give you the books of the Bible. And one easy way I debunk Protestantism is I ask them, where is the list of the books in the Bible, right? The Bible is infallible. Okay. Where is the books? Where is the list of books that belong in the Bible? What verse? Give me a verse. I'm waiting. They can't give you a verse because they needed to depend on these ecumenical councils, and they needed to depend on the Bible to give you, the church, sorry, to give you the Bible. Like, they make an argument similar to the Muslims that, it just kind of fell from the sky. You just had all these people write it and it somehow came to be. Historically, that's not accurate. They needed to rely on the Catholic and the Orthodox Church to give them the Bible. And that is why I'm not Protestant.